Good morning, everyone. Good crack of noon to our folks on the East Coast. I am Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive Corporation, joined here today by Kirk Hoagland, President and CEO, or CEO and Principal Consultant of Clientek. And today we're going to be talking about security from a developer's perspective, looking behind the curtain, giving you guys a look at the world that you don't always see, or maybe you see it and maybe you think it's good, but I want to tell you, Kirk has some interesting things to say. If you have been to our events in the past, you know we are all business. We're less about fluff and more about content. To that end, we will go over the quick agenda for the day. We'll meet Productive in 1 minute. I'll give you an introduction to Clientek, and then we'll get right into it. We have the chat feature. Please utilize that. I'll get your questions answered. This is going to be very interactive. Really, it's a conversation between Kirk and I, and it's something that I hope you really enjoy, and I hope that it is useful for you. So with that, buckle up. We got a lot to go through and not a ton of time, so let's start rolling. Who is Productive Corporation, say you? Well, that is a fantastic question. Productive is a security and storage software expert for mid-sized companies. We have dedicated account execs so that you don't have to navigate the publisher, wait on hold, or find the info yourself. These guys can help you. We have tons of content at our website, which is Productive demos. You have publisher downloads, trials. All of this you can find at productivecorp.com. We also produce a lot of content like the Knowledge Series. We do 2-minute tech, P-guides, product comparisons, what's happening in the mid-market with IT infrastructure. All of this can be found at productivecorp.com/content. The bottom line is we have the resources to help you. Help at productivecorp.com, 800-726-4099. We are here to help you. And one of the ways that we do that is by putting on content. We've listened to you guys over the years. You said, hey, we want to hear what's relevant about the products in the space. We want to hear knowledge in the space. We want to hear expertise. Today, we have some fantastic expertise for you. Kirk Hoagland, who is the CEO and Principal Consultant of Clientek, is going to talk to us about, what we should be thinking about in terms of security, right? What does an app developer, what is their perspective? What are they seeing that we may not always be seeing, right? So first off, who is Clientek, right? Well, Clientek has been doing app development and business process consulting for over 20 years, right? They've done over 1,700 different projects with mid-sized companies to Fortune 500. I like to think of them as, tech, the tech know-it-alls. They come in, you show them the disparate pieces, they put them together, or they see what's happening, they understand why it's working, why it's not working. They make you more effective, more secure, more efficient, and they build the environment around your environment. Great guys, Kirk manages. He's the captain of the ship. They're all about process improvement, project execution, and strategy. So very happy to welcome Kirk here today. Give a warm virtual round of applause for Kirk Hoagland. Yeah. Man, Kirk, I don't know, it's singing through my ears right now. These guys are hammering the keyboards. They're super excited to talk to you. I am super excited to have you here because, right, Kirk and I have known each other for a number of years, gotten together over lunch and drinks, and we go back and forth about security, right? I'm infrastructure product guys. He's this crazy, wacky development guy. And I'll say, oh, I'm secure here. And he'll say, no, you're not. Or think about this. Think about that. And this is where a lot of this content came from. So one of the things that sparked my interest was, we talk, confidentially about, some experiences we'll have with different clients. And one thing that really got me going was he told me about a mid-sized client that they got called in for a particular reason and found a bunch of different stuff that really was pretty eye-opening for everyone, including me. So, Kirk, welcome. Maybe hop right in and tell me what was going on here.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting engagement for us. A decent-sized financial services company, 500 employees, with serving thousands of customers, small to medium-sized customers. And they noticed through hotline calls from their customers that there seemed to be an odd issue with this self-service online system that customers could use to view their financial information. The complaint from their customers was that occasionally they would log in with their credentials, call up their information, and see the information for some other company. It happened infrequently and apparently happened not through malicious intent. So this was a valid user just really trying to use the system. And here they were looking at, instead of Clientek's information, they were looking at Productive's information. Pretty serious problem for a company like that to face, and that was the issue that we were called in to help them fix.
So tell me, what they thought they were secure though, right? I mean, they thought, hey, we're all good, we're working according to best practice, or we think that there's no way that we could have a hole here. What was kind of the issue?
Yeah, so they had table stakes like many of us do. They had secure infrastructure. So they had firewalls and many of the things that we got to have as table stakes in place, giving them the feeling that they were secure. And suddenly they're seeing a clear security breach of one customer looking at another customer's data. It was believed to be non-malicious, and in fact we found that that was the case. The customers weren't trying to break the system. They were running into a simple, straightforward bug in the system. But a couple of keys here is that they thought they were secure because they had secure infrastructure and they had two-factor authentication. The user would log in with a username and password, go to another page and answer a secret question, and then go to a third page and access their account information. Even after all of that, something happened, and they were able to view somebody else's secure data.
Oh, okay.
So
go ahead.
A serious problem kind of came out of nowhere because of two assumptions that they made. One of them was that secure infrastructure is enough, and that the other one is that authentication is protection.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point, right? I mean, most people say, well, yeah. I mean, even here, I mean, isn't the data that's going over the air, aren't we completely protected?
Yeah, so probably the third big assumption many of us make is that there are protocols in place, one of them is SSL, that help protect us from this kind of thing. So the username and password that I used to log in was submitted through a website and then encrypted by an SSL protocol and sent in a completely safe manner through the internet into their server. It entered their server, was decrypted in, and they were in. And that all sounds really, really good. There's a couple of big issues with that, however. The first I already mentioned is that don't forget that people with valid credentials are also trying to break your system. One key. Another one is that SSL actually provides minimal protection when you're talking about that kind of hacking attempt. So SSL is great for protecting more broad scale, maybe high volume attacks, maybe man-in-the-middle, remote man-in-the-middle attacks. But when we're talking about an attack from a valid user, SSL becomes useless, and I can talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
Okay, yeah, we'll get more into that. But you're really saying, right? I mean, somebody coming in with valid credentials is really maybe a problem that people aren't necessarily going to recognize as a problem.
I would say that it's the #1 vulnerability we find when we're helping our clients is that they have a rock-solid infrastructure, security protection, and really good end-tier security protection. For instance, the web tier is well protected from the data tier. All that's in place and working well, and it's a well-understood problem to solve. What they're missing is that they're letting people in through all of those security layers because they have valid credentials. What about protecting yourselves from those people?
Oh, okay. So, all right, so I get that. That's something to consider. Another thing you talked to me about relative to these guys and some of the other customers are not only, you know, the valid credentials, checking out security on that, but understanding, you know, where your users are located relative to the access they're trying to get. So can you talk about sometimes how in app development that is overlooked?
Yeah, so if you think back not even that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe less, most IT departments could do something like this. They could say anybody accessing the corporate systems is going to use a corporate PC that's using the corporate standard desktop with all the lockdowns in place, no administrative privileges, and no one else can access our corporate systems except those special PCs. That was common not that long ago. You could even say you're only going to use IE8 and you can't install plugins, you know, that sort of thing. Those kind of rules were in place, still in place, and are common ways to address this issue of, yeah, but where is my user and what kind of tools is he using? Really, those days are gone. So people work from home. We have BYOD issues with their mobile devices. Even now, BYOD devices with their slates, tablets, surfaces, and laptops. And we've kind of freed up our workplace so that our people are feeling more productive, but they're using equipment that's no longer locked down. And they're using it wherever they feel like using it. So many of the attacks that were hard when we had the whole stream locked down, even the PC itself, are now easy because I'm sitting in my basement using my own wireless access point, hooked up to my own router, hooked up to my own server, and I have control over all that stream before it ever hits the corporate system or online system.
Interesting. And we'll see a little bit more about ramifications of that here, right, in a bit. So that is interesting. That kind of, you know, shows me, you know, some of these guys, some of the stuff you're doing it, you think it's good, but sometimes there are unexpected outcomes, which leads me really into the next topic, which is just right the core of your business, app development itself, right? Everybody here on the phone, either somebody from the business side or them internally, has either had to build an app, had to hire people to build an app, manage, right, or deal with that infrastructure fallout from it. Seems like every time I hear somebody, and that when you tell me, right, they start with app development with the best of intentions. Can you give me some color on what are the drivers and what else happens and how guys potentially can get off track or are off track and don't even realize it?
Sure, and I think everyone on the phone can sympathize with the fact that app development is often too expensive, takes too long, and even more often doesn't give us exactly what we wanted. It's odd to think that our industry hasn't progressed more than it has, but on the other hand, if you think back to when the PC first hit the market in the very early 80s, before that, software wasn't written by very large teams, and there wasn't very large software, and it was confined to single focused purposes running on mainframes. And then we created the PC and spread it over the whole world. So now everybody has, you know, I have 15 PCs in my house running various kinds of software that I feel like running. Suddenly, the user base is infinite, and all of these people are demanding software of certain kinds, and more and more and more and more. And the development industry, the software development methodologies and practices are only now starting to catch up with an ability to meet the true needs of how complex software development can be. What happens now is, because of sharp timelines, maybe a little bit of under-training or under-experience, and just trying to get this thing out the door, there are a lot of things missed. We see a very large number of systems that we help repair where it got out the door with pretty severe application vulnerabilities in it around security.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. You've kind of mentioned that there's certain APIs that might be easy to build but aren't as secure, and tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the ways that we've tried to increase the effectiveness and productivity of app developers is to give them better and better tools. That's good. And then there are very good tools in the marketplace now. And standardized APIs and friendly APIs, and even web APIs that upon a query will tell you about themselves. There are many web APIs in the world that if you give it the right query call, it'll actually tell you all the parameters you would use to call it and describe to you its answers to that. And while that sounds like such a good thing for developers, think of a hacker as a developer. So you gave your developers the tools to be more effective at attacking, more effective at using your internal systems, and now the hackers are more effective at attacking your system because they use the same tools and skills.
Oh, okay. So, all right, which is kind of leads into a funny story you told me about, a company that they needed some discrete app built. A guy knew a guy, or a guy had a buddy or a son that was pretty technical. And tell me that story.
Yeah, to save time and money, we all want to save time and money. It's not so much cutting corners. That's not how we think of it really in anything we do. It's really saving time and money, making more money for the company, being a more effective organization. Sometimes those choices to save money can lead you a little bit down the wrong path. One of our clients called us in desperation because the developer, who was a talented developer who built the app, decided that the right new life for him was the Peace Corps. This is a true story. And so gave his 2-week notice, hopped on a plane to some remote land, and wasn't heard from by that company ever again. Well, the problem is he took with him the knowledge of how to build the application, and worse, the root passwords to the machines that were used to build the application, back up the software, control the database. So they had a system that kind of worked, was almost done, and there was no way to finish it. They couldn't even log on to the computer that had the application on it.
I love that one, right? And we're talking about, these guys are what, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 employees, right? This isn't, Bob and Bob's wife, right? I mean, this is a size organization.
This is an $80 million financial services company. This was one of the many things they do, right? So things fell between the cracks, and this one was, holy cow, what do we do now?
Yeah. So interesting. So, hey, let's move out of, the great stories, great stuff. Let's look a little real world for you, and let's take a look at some of this code. Now, Kirk went and, we don't want to expose anybody and really, tell you who it is, but what I'm going to say is, hey, Kirk went out to a real website that he does business with as a consumer, and real account, all this kind of stuff. We've hidden all this, but why don't you tell me what you found and kind of what you did? Why don't you take us through it, Kirk?
Right. So the role I adopted was someone with valid credentials who wishes to subvert a system for their own gain. So keep in mind, I'm not trying to hack somebody else's account. I'm not trying to hack Todd's productive account or Salesforce.com account to get his customer list. I'm hacking my own account, literally hacking my own account for reasons of my own and maybe for financial gain. And so I have a lot of control over the endpoint that's just sitting in my house. And what I'm able to do, and what I did, was configure a Windows box with a proxy, have the proxy generate a valid secure certificate, have that secure certificate installed in the Windows root CA of my box, calling it trusted, and then accessed this e-commerce site through what is now a trusted second layer of SSL. So my proxy talks to the e-commerce site using its SSL handshake. They agree on an encryption mechanism and do that. And then my proxy exposes everything I would like before it re-encrypts it and talks to the Internet Explorer, who believes it's talking to a trusted host because I was able to install the root CA. At this point,
yeah, go ahead.
At this point,
these aren't some specialized tools you have, right? I mean, these are basic developer tools.
Well, as a matter of fact, in this case, I didn't even pay for any of these tools. I can just go to a website and download them, and they give you instructions on that same website how to do exactly this.
Okay.
So now what I'm able to do is, you know, with a website, you can always look under the covers a bit, because if you get in your browser, visit a page, you can, in Internet Explorer, you can hit the View menu, and there's a thing called View Source, and you can look at all the source code and all the gobbledygook that came down to your browser in order to build up that page. And often you can find a lot of stuff there. But this gives me one level more. I can see all the traffic going between me and the e-commerce site, and I can even intercept it and change it. That's in the world that's called a replay attack. So I can copy a transaction, change parameters of it, and send it back, replay it for malicious intent. So I just did some quick and dirty things here, and frankly, I'm picking the less dangerous examples so that I don't embarrass unintentionally this website owner. But after setting up this proxy, I went to my login page, and I have valid credentials on this site, and I clicked the login button, and I got a username password screen, and I typed in my username password and hit login. The URL of the username password screen is up there at the top with a little bit of obfuscation to prevent the owner being upset. What that page did is it engaged in an HTTPS secure post of a payload to get me logged in. And what that payload was is actually simply plain text recording of my username and password. I've blurred it out there. But under that blue blur is my username and password in plain text, human readable. We could talk a little bit more about why that's important, but there it is, username and password. Interestingly enough, upon login, I'm redirected to an account management page, which was where I expecting to go. One of the elements, just simply looking under the covers, one of the elements present in that account management page is a little piece of data stored in JavaScript that also in plain text lists my internal account ID. That internal account ID I can find by searching through other information on this site is used in all of the requests to answer my account number. And in particular, it can be intercepted and modified in those requests.
Interesting. So, all right. So then, you kind of then keep rolling through this and show where there's even additional abilities for guys to expose and manipulate what's going on here.
Right. Another example. Again, I picked an innocuous one here, but you'll see why it wouldn't have to be innocuous. Is one of the things that web page did, I could see it plainly in my source editor. It would made an asynchronous API call, a REST style call. In REST, you issue the get verb on a fully qualified URI or object name, which is what all this stuff is you see on the screen. There's a couple of issues with that. One is that clearly exposes details of protocol you might not wish to have exposed to a hacker. Now, this particular get is pretty innocuous because it's involved with their chat service. but you can see that it contains data, real data in there. So that GET is executed asynchronously by the web page, and what it returns is actually runnable JavaScript. So in this case, what the developer was trying for, it's kind of a good idea. If you let all the JavaScript just live in your main web page, it's easy to look at it. You can go into the view source menu and just see code. In this case, the code was delivered asynchronously, and the view source won't show it. So you might not be able to ever see all this code that was coming into this web page on my client machine to run. However, because I have a proxy in place, not only can I see the call, but I can see the code that comes back that's about to get injected into my website and run. If you go to the next page, we don't really have to go in detail into this code, but this is just an example of this asynchronous call returned this Java code and much more. I just grabbed a piece out of the middle.
And so you said, right, I mean, Ray, you kind of did the innocuous stuff, but you could see the stuff, and I think you had said, right, even after the session was over, you could still get this info.
Yeah, so there's two really key things here. One is, because I could record the GET, all parameters of the GET using my proxy, I can replay that GET outside the session. Now, a well-built application would refuse to honor the GET outside a session. In this case, they didn't build that kind of security level in. So I can run, what I learned is I can run object GETs against their site without being logged in. Okay, I can run object GETs against their site without being logged in. That's huge. Here's one more huge thing. My proxy intercepted this code before it was delivered to the web page that was on my client browser. Now, I didn't do this, but I had an opportunity to change the code before it was delivered to my web page. And the web page would be unaware of the fact that that occurred. So what we often see is this mechanism is used. I can intercept the code, and for instance, you see a bunch of if checks in there. What if I learn through reading the code that those if checks are keeping me from having certain capabilities on the web page? Well, then I'll just remove them from the code or make them just return a true all the time. And suddenly I've changed the whole behavior of the web page.
Which is not beneficial if you are the website owner, correct?
Well, sure. I mean, maybe that code is supposed to hide buttons that you're not supposed to see, or hide panels that you shouldn't see, or turn off functionality that you're not supposed to have. If I can see the code, I can make those restrictions go away.
Yep. Which is, right, that's the equivalent of finding the open door. So, wow. So you got, you know, you've piqued my interest, Kirk. Now, so is this it, or do we actually have, can we talk about maybe what are some best practice things to people should be thinking about that can, you know, you're never going to eliminate your exposure, but hopefully you can minimize it. So what are some things that the folks here should be thinking about?
Yeah, so in a lot of my examples that you just saw and things I've discussed, I've talked about application developers who unintentionally expose more information than they'd like, or make it easy to find weaknesses such as poorly handled exceptions or that sort of thing. So maybe you've seen it occasionally. You visit a website and instead of getting the right page, you get this stack dump 2 pages long because something on their site broke. Well, that's information to you, right? That's information about how their site works. That kind of thing should never come out on a website. So really the first big recommendation is stop making the hacker's job easy. So you got to be able to handle exceptions like that. You got to make sure that your protocol, for instance, can't be executed without a session or a login. You got to make sure that things like token IDs and account IDs and usernames are never passed in plain text. All of these things that are kind of routine these days for a developer because it's work to not do it, all make the hacker's job easy.
Okay. So there's ways, right? Just it's a little bit more labor intensive for the developer to code it the right way.
Yeah, it's labor intensive for them kind of once, and it makes, in many cases, it can make the hacker's job nearly impossible. So that's kind of the trade-off you want. I mean, as you said, you can't protect against everything, but you can raise the bar high enough where it's just not worth me trying to hack it. So keep in mind what we're talking about is not large-scale hacking that you hear about all the time, right? It's one person trying to hack their own account, or maybe Todd's account because I stole his username and password, for one purpose. So it's low-volume hacking, but it can still result in theft. It can result in a loss of data integrity. It has real effects.
Yeah, I mean, this is espionage. This is how people get key data, right?
Right. So another thing to keep in mind, and everyone's heard it 1,000 times, the last thing you do is test, and if we run out of time to test, then you don't test. It's almost a cliche in our industry, and we're getting better with processes that help that. But I'm surprised at the number of our clients who don't test for security at all. So can someone access, so for instance, can someone run a query without being logged in? Easy to test for. Run the queries without logging in, right? So always, you got to test for security. And you got to remember that one of your threat vectors is subversion by a valid user with valid credentials. So you also have to always test, always conclude tests that test security using valid credentials. It's a huge key.
Yep, that is seems to be a common theme, right? People think, hey, if I don't have valid credentials, I can't get in. Therefore, we are secure, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of the other thing I talk about a lot is infrastructure-related security, like firewalls and DoD protection and all that kind of thing. They're table stakes. You got to have those, and really you should even have those first. But they're not your sole protection, and in fact, they do nothing to protect you from valid users hacking their own information.
Okay, because they're in.
They're in.
Yeah, right. So it's like basically you're inside, so nobody's looking at you anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then kind of maybe one of the last things is increase your awareness of what's going on with either your internal IT systems, corporate systems, or your external-facing e-commerce sites or whatever. So one quick example is the customer I mentioned early, where we found lots of security issues with their site. We did a weblog analysis of their primary servers, and with a timestamp correlation tool, we were able to show that they were essentially being probed constantly and occasionally even experiencing mini attacks, and I'll talk about mini attacks in a second, and for months. So they were a little bit unaware of what usefulness is embedded in logs. So web servers have logs, but so do all the other components usually in a complete system. So the firewall has logs, and the database server has logs, and the application server has logs. The most effective way to examine those and become aware of attacks already occurring on your system is to use a log analysis tool. So those tools will correlate multiple logs and let you compare timestamps and line up events and say, you know, it came into the website this way, and then it went to the middle tier this way, and then it went to the database this way. But I mentioned mini attacks a second ago. You'd be surprised at how many mini attacks occur on probably all your websites every day. Their only purpose is to brag. Literally, only purpose is to brag. When you see the attacks in your log, there will even be often a log message in there that says, ha ha ha, I was able to attack your system in this way, aren't you stupid? I mean, literally you'll see attacks that have that footprint. They don't take anything from you. What they're saying is they could have. They just thought it was fun to throw a little mini attack against you. This client of ours that I was talking about would get hundreds of those a day, hundreds of those a day.
And right, so mostly, right, they're getting to the website, which may be hosted elsewhere, right? But really, they're looking at then your other systems that are tied into that, right? Some sort of commerce, some sort of customer access, some sort of employee access, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow. Well, good stuff. I am going to, if there's any questions that we haven't addressed, why don't you shoot those now to me via the chat log, or Kirk, give me your final thoughts here.
I think by now I've repeated it enough, but I'm going to repeat it one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Valid credentials don't make security.
Mm-hmm.
There is a threat vector that is a valid user with valid credentials having a valid account for valid reasons. Really quick example of that, one of our clients builds time and attendance software and hardware, time clocks, and mobile devices. And one of their threats that they go to great lengths to protect themselves from is someone clocks in 15 minutes late, so they're going to be docked an hour pay, so they want to make their time clock punch time be 15 minutes earlier, and they take great pains to do so.
Oh, okay. That's great. Well, hey, thanks so much, Kirk. Fantastic information, very informative. Everybody who attended, thank you so much. We know you have a ton of stuff going on. The fact that you chose to spend the past 45 minutes with us, really appreciate it. Your productive account exec is going to be following up with you. If you want to talk more about this, if you want to talk with Kirk, they can facilitate that. They're going to make sure they have all your info to get you your gift card. And if there's anything else that we can help you with, let us know. Let us know what you thought about this, what you liked. If you wanted more of something else, let us know that as well. So everybody, Kirk, thanks so much. Everybody else, thanks for coming. I'm Todd Obert from Productive. Going to be signing off here. Hope you guys have a fantastic balance of your day and week. We'll talk soon. Thanks.